today is what, in my opinion, was the most remarkable medical, I used to think discovery, but it's actually a rediscovery, that we may have seen in this generation, or at least for 100 years. And it has to do basically with a new paradigm in medicine. And that paradigm, which emerged at Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York City in the spring of 1990, was that all disease-causing bacteria, microbes, germs, pathogens, parasites, and viruses are completely controllable by electrification of the blood. And that means that if you put a very small current, typically 50 to 100 microamperes, millions of an ampere through the blood, it somehow alters the outer protein layer of any parasites known, any germs, any bacteria, so they can no longer attach to human cells, reproduce themselves, use those cells to reproduce their own RNA, DNA, and they die, are neutralized in the blood. The body flushes them out through the kidneys, the liver, the lymph, and you're well. Now, when I first read about this, and incidentally, you might find this interesting that it's only been mentioned about 3 times that I know of in the press since its invention, and this happens to be the greatest discovery in medicine that, in my opinion, has been done well forever. The first article on this was in the March 20th, 1991 Science News, page 247, and it announced that Dr. Stephen Kali, K-A-A-L-I, and his colleagues at Albert Einstein College of Medicine had discovered that if they put a couple of wires in a Petri dish containing a high concentration of human blood and HIV, that the HIV virus could no longer attach to those cells. That meant that they had a universal cure for AIDS. But how many times have you read in the press that there is no cure for AIDS? That the government has spent $1.2 to $1.3 billion in researching antibiotics and researching vaccines and researching chemicals that are supposed to slow this down. And the best that I know of that they have come up with to date are the combination therapies. They're called cocktails. And Dr. Wu was made Man of the Year a year and a half ago for pointing out that when you combined AZT, DDI, DD5, you could cut down the AIDS count in the blood tremendously. But what you probably haven't read is the latest research that reveals that a third of AIDS patients cannot take these combination therapies because of gastrointestinal upsets. Another third of them cannot take the viruses because, the antivirals, because it does nothing. They don't get any better, they don't get any worse. And the third that can take them, which represent $5,000 to $20,000 a year in income for the pharmaceutical houses, will very rapidly die the moment they stop taking them. Why? Because the viruses left in the blood are so virulent that they have the power of overpowering the patient in just a few days, and they will die of HIV of a much more virulent form. Don't forget, the HIV mutates very, very rapidly, one of the most rapidly mutating retroviruses known. And so it's rather strange that since their discovery, only 3 or 4 articles have appeared. An interesting article did appear in the Houston Post on Wednesday, March 20th, 1991, in which they announced the discovery. And then later, in Longevity magazine, December 1992, page 14, in which Dr. Kali and his colleagues tried to backtrack the discovery, and they say